Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
It's time for the Bonnie Sher Show, a whirlwind of wit, wisdom, celebrity, and the boomer life. With a little bit of this and a lot of that and so much more you don't want to miss, here's Bonnie.
Well, hello and welcome. Thanks for tuning in and joining our chat today, and I'd like to send a thanks to Wayne Cobham for my Super Duper Hero theme song. I am Bonnie Sher, and I am going to be your host today through the world of entertainment, through the world of the wonderful generation of boomers, and of course of the type 1 diabetes community. Today's guests are editor of Insulin Nation, Type 2 Nation, Información sobre Diabetes, Craig Idlebrook. And by the way, Craig has written about health policy, environmental health, community health, and maternal health for over 25 publications. He's here with us today, as well as Sharon Roberson, my latest and newest sister from right here in California, and a member of the T1D community. If you have a question or a comment, please give us a call. The number here is 323-843-2826, or you can follow the hashtag BSHER Radio on Twitter. So now let's settle in and please say hello to my first guest, Craig Idlebrook.
Hear me?
Hello, Craig. Are you there with me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Excellent.
There we go. I still feel like that Verizon commercial. Can you hear me now? Except he split and went to Sprint.
That was a genius marketing move. Yes, that was amazing.
I kind of like that stuff. Craig, I've told our listeners and viewers already that you are the editor of Insulin Nation and other publications. I also happen to know, because you told me, that you yourself are not a diabetic.
That's correct.
So my first question is going to be, how did we get so lucky to get you?
Oh, well, thank you very much. I feel like I'm the one that got lucky in having this be my job, because it's sort of like everything you want out of a journalism job, in that you get to learn something every day, you get to support people, you get to connect people to each other, and you get to connect people to information that they can use. And so I feel extremely lucky. So to answer your question, basically, to be honest, it was a bit of happenstance where I was I had been working as a freelance reporter and editor for a long time, and a friend of mine who I'd worked for at one point happened to mention that there was an opening over with Insulin Nation, and literally said, drop everything, go get an interview. So I went down there and interviewed, and was there to assist. And I was very lucky to get on the ground floor with Chris Leach, who founded Insulin Nation, who also didn't have type 1 diabetes, but had throughout his life dealt with at least one chronic illness that I know of. And So he was starting a publication for Insulin Nation, which he had already started for people with type 1 diabetes, with sort of this understanding of how to connect people with type 1 and how to best support them, having gone through his own chronic illnesses. And I just learned a lot from him, and unfortunately he passed away at some point, and I got to take the helm. But by then, luckily, I had learned enough from Chris of what I knew and what I didn't know to try and be an effective editor. So it was very lucky on my part.
Well, I think it was lucky for us, to tell you the truth. I've been reading you now for quite a while, and I get some phenomenal sources of information and questions that come up in my mind and issues. On that point, recently you published onto Facebook a piece on prisoners not receiving the proper care and treatment, ostensibly keeping them from their Eighth Amendment rights, guaranteeing a ban on cruel and unusual punishment.
Right.
I can't think of anything more cruel and unusual than holding medication of any type back from anybody,
Right.
and especially a life-sparing drug. Most of what I've read rather, has had to do with that issue in the prison system, but clearly it's also occurring in jails
Right.
as well.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I can't even begin to believe. But, I'll tell you, and I may have mentioned this to you. I reached out to a woman, her name is Alyssa Profaci,
Right.
who she's retired now, but was the female warden at an East Coast prison for many, many years. And I was shocked when I spoke with her, and this is a well-educated woman and, has this place in the system. She had no idea that there was a difference, that there was a type 1 and a type 2.
It's a really difficult task. It's a really unfortunate situation for everyone involved, but certainly more so for the people who are not getting, their blood sugar checked or their insulin when needed. I do think, like, the problem that we have as a society right now is that we're asking both police officers and the penal system to act as to do a lot of tasks, including medical tasks that used to be done by, for instance, by the mental health professional system. And along those lines, so you have a perfect storm where you have overworked nurses and doctors who are trying to deal with a laundry list of issues. You have even among doctors, there's a huge ignorance about the differences between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, how to handle type 1 diabetes. And then you add in the regimented life that has to be, to a certain extent, for many in the prison system, so that there's a time and that there is a roll call and a time for getting your medical needs met. And you just have a real terrible situation for some people. The story that I believe you're mentioning is about a young woman in Texas who was being held in Arkansas. It's Texarkana. I always confuse that. Who was being held in a holding cell, and she somehow missed her medical roll call. And the problem is they don't really know if she refused it, which even then it still would be cruel and unusual punishment, but it'd be more understandable, or because they don't really have records to show what exactly happened, or it's just she might have had really high blood sugar and was lethargic and wasn't able to be roused, because that would go down as being refusing treatment as well. And then once she woke up, apparently, according to the stories that we saw, the reports that we saw, she started desperately asking for to have her blood sugar checked, and probably that she was in need of insulin. And this went on for hours, but they went with a protocol of saying, well, you missed your time, you're gonna have to wait, until she became unresponsive. And only then, much later after that, they started trying to take sort of ineffective, from the looks of it, medical action. And she did pass away. And so, unfortunately, this isn't a unique story. It's not every day, but even in the best of circumstances, type 1 diabetes care in a prisoner jail system is usually, from what we're seeing, not up to par. It's not something where, with some understandably in somewhat, that you can't just give people complete access to their medical equipment in certain situations in certain populations. But in most cases, it would seem like that's cruel and unusual punishment to withhold access to testing supplies and withhold insulin. Like, there are people who have to stand in line for their insulin. We did another story of having to stand in line for a long time.
Yeah, I read that also. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so it's part of something that's not I don't want to say a pet project of mine because it's too important for that, but it's something that I wanted to do with Insulination in trying to find the voices that aren't being heard traditionally within the type 1 diabetes blogging community. It's like right now we happen to have a very strong, very vibrant type 1 diabetes community who has gotten really good at advocating for themselves. But it's almost like there's these unknown knowns or unknown unknowns where there's these pockets of people who aren't being served by that community, by that online community. And so I like to try and explore those aspects that aren't being covered. And I know there are other people that are starting to do this. Unfortunately, I've forgotten the name of the blogging site, but there's someone who started sort of a site specifically for people with diabetes and discussing diversity in diabetes. And I'm very excited about that. And I sort of want to continue that work too. I want to broaden, the type 1 diabetes community so that it's serving everyone, because it's sort of like a rising tide lifts all boats.
Absolutely. I do know that in 2012, that the Federal Bureau of Prisons did come up with some substantial dialogue and wrote that, and they published guidelines for. They did take it up with type 1, type 2, as well as gestational diabetes. Definite indications for insulin as initial therapies. I mean, what happens if somebody develops as a T1 while incarcerated? And then they also call for, quote, frequent monitoring of the blood glucose at least 3 times a day. It's saying that that's optimal. They don't say they are obligated. That's what is optimal.
Right. And I mean, it's great that they're coming up with these standards, but there's definitely more work.
There's so much
needs
more
to be done. And of course, then there's the problem of, like, you don't have a uniform jail and prison system to a certain extent, and so there's different standards and different budgets. So I mean, I think the takeaway that we keep on trying to hammer home is, if you can, and your prisoner jail allows you to do this. I volunteered not for this subject, but I volunteered in jails before, and if you ever want to do good for an unmet needs in a population, that is it. If you can train people more about type 1 diabetes within your local jail or prison, that could save a life.
I was thinking about that very same thing, and I'm wondering if perhaps there's a way that we can reach out, or something can happen to bring in certified diabetes educators.
Mm-hmm. That'd be great.
They're trained. That's exactly what they're trained to do.
Yeah, I agree.
So maybe that's something that we can push forward together.
And the other thing, unfortunately, is this isn't like, there's a lot of people that make their way through a jail or a prison system, even for small nuisance law violations.
Yes.
And so it's really important that, if you're listening and you might be looking to serve some time, make sure you have a plan. Make sure you have family that advocates for you. sort of try and even though it's a terrible situation to think about, try and come up with a plan and try and come up with, try and talk with the prison officials about your needs, and be persistent but polite, even in the face of dire circumstances. Sometimes it's just to see if you can get what you need.
That's excellent advice. I hope none of us have to use it.
Okay.
But, you do have to be wary, be leery, and hope to hell you get somebody who understands what the problems are. But I think a great takeaway from today, at least for me, is I'd never thought about that, about going into a prison. I mean, I've gone to serve Thanksgiving meals down on Skid Row, but no, I have never, and I just think that is a phenomenal way of helping. Thanks, Craig. That was very cool. I really, really appreciate that. And I appreciate you. And I appreciate you giving us your time today.
You're welcome.
Would you do me a favor? Tell our listeners how they can follow you, just in case they don't know about Insulin
Sure,
Nation.
absolutely.
Or, I mean, basically my show is geared to type 1, but I type 2s are cousins. So let's talk about it all.
Right. Sure. So we have 3 publications right now. The main one is that we're with is insulination.com, and you can sign up for a free newsletter. And the idea is that we're not as much about like the nuts and bolts of type 1 care and how to treat your hypo, although we'll do those kinds of articles here and there. We're about trying to look at all aspects of life with type 1 diabetes, and we'll talk about technology, and we'll talk about support, and we'll talk about these sort of aspects that we haven't thought about before. Everything from like sex to menstruation, things that just the people aren't comfortable usually talking about, if possible. And
that's why it's such an important piece that goes around. I know I look forward to it. So listen, everybody out there, while you're busy signing up, and I want you to get on that mailing list. Right around the same time you come on to mine at BonnieSher.com. Just double click and we'll do Insulin Nation too. Craig, you do great work, and thank you so very much for everything you do. You're a wonderful guy. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Interesting man with a great job, and he does it beautifully. Before we go to break, it was just wonderful to be able to chat with him. And, you are listening to the Bonnie Sher Show. So come on, join the conversation. The call-in number here one more time is 323-843-2826. And you can follow the hashtag #BeShareRadio on Twitter. Coming up, a shout from my soapbox. You know the one that shares with you what's making me feel great, and my shout down to those whom I think should be ashamed of themselves. So let's go to break with one of my all-time favorite tunes sung by one of my all-time favorite singers, and it really does sum up how I feel. So let's take it away with Being Alive by Miss Julie Budd. Take it away.
Somebody hold me too close. Somebody hurt me too deep. Somebody sit in my chair and ruin my sleep and make me aware of being alive. Being Somebody know me too well. Somebody pull me up short and put me through hell and give me support for being alive. Make me alive. Make me alive. Make me confused. Mock me with grace. Let me be used. Vary my days. But alone is alone, not alone. Somebody crowd me with love. Somebody force me to care. Somebody make me come through. I'll always be there, as frightened as you, to help us survive. Being alive, being alive, being alive. Somebody make me come through. I'll always be there, as frightened as you, to help us survive. Being alive, being alive, being
Yeah, man. Being alive. Phew. Okay, well, welcome back to the Bonnie Sher Show. So verklempt from that song. Joining me in this segment is Sharon Roberson, a member of the T1D community from the great state of California, my new sister. Say hello to Sharon Roberson. Hello there, Sharon.
Hello, Bonnie.
Sharon, you've been a T1D for quite a while. Would you share your story with us, please?
Well, I was diagnosed at age 9, quite young, and I've had quite a journey with it. It's been, didn't always take great care of myself back then in the olden days, but I learned that it wasn't going to be a short, happy life. It was going to be a long, miserable life if I didn't behave. So I got my act together and...
Give us an idea. I mean, I don't want to drag you back to that time, but when you say you weren't taking care of yourself, were you skipping insulin? What was going on in your mind and in your action at that time? Do you remember?
Yes, I do remember. Don't we all? Well, at one point, none of you listened to me out there. I went to a talk on diabetes when I was a teenager, and the doctor was talking about how insulin brings carbohydrates and the food you eat into your cells for energy, and if you don't have enough insulin, you excrete everything you eat out, and so you don't get nourished. And I was like, clutching. And so I did that for a period of time.
I hear you.
And I could eat whatever I want and stick thin. And it was a good gig while it lasted until, I was walking around with ketoacidosis all the time. And I don't recommend that to anyone.
No.
Because I did pay the price. I don't know if it was my fault. I don't blame myself for mistakes I've made, because I did the best I could at the time, knowing what I knew. And when I knew better, I did better. But I was a kid, and they gave me an adult disease.
Yes.
And so it was a lot of responsibility to take care of. So consequently, I got through that. But one of the ways, I think it was before this happened, I my biggest stories that, I had like a Steel Magnolias type story where while I was married, I got pregnant and it caused kidney failures right away. Like within a few weeks, I gained 15 pounds and I was wondering what was going on, and it was all water weight. And there's my beautiful husband up there on the screen I just saw. And he's really a great man. But so I ended up being hospitalized and told I never had kidney failure. I had 100% kidney function. I went to 50% right away. And it was hard, and so I was in the hospital, and I had all these pregnancy specialists, high-risk pregnancy specialists, these nephrologists, everyone coming in, talking to me. I was in a Catholic hospital, and they were saying, well, there's a chance you may not survive, and the child may not survive, and it was a mess. And I was fortunate enough to have, sounds terrible to say, but I was fortunate enough to have a miscarriage, and so that resolved that. But I was still left with no kidney function, well, 50% function, which I went on the ACE inhibitors, and that really helped, prolong my kidney function. So I went another 11 years before I dropped to 19%, which is the magic. Getting under 20%, you can get listed for a kidney. And so
so you were.
I was. And I was told about this fairy tale called a simultaneous kidney pancreas transplant. And I still didn't believe it, because in the 80s I had met some guy that had a pancreas transplant. He didn't look well. He was all messed up, and I was like, I don't know. This isn't for me. This is too. If it sounds too good to be true, it is, and I could lose it. So don't get excited. So, but I had people encourage me to do it, and I did research. My husband did research. We both decided together to get listed for this at UCLA. And it was pretty exciting, except I went still, once I got listed and decided to, I still wouldn't believe it was going to happen. I was, I don't want to be disappointed and, burst the bubble of a dream like that. So every once in a while, I had to indulge myself in dreaming, but anyhow, I got a call like 4 weeks after I got on the transplant list, and I was like, whoa, wait a second. I was like, they said, the nurse, the transplant coordinator said, do you have any questions, before you come up? I was supposed to go up to the hospital. And I said, yes, is there a phone number I can call in case I chicken out? And, it's like, is there a phone number I can call?
No, wait, this was for just the pancreas,
No,
or
the
just
the
it was
kidney and pancreas.
that was part of the team.
It was
okay.
a double organ
And
transplant.
I see.
And that's why they called so fast, because you get prioritized when you get 2 organs. So you move up on the list. So, fortunately enough, I go to UCLA, and I'm in the hospital room, and there's all these teams coming in, and then they come in later, a long time after they're doing all this testing and stuff, and they're saying, I'm so sorry, Miss Roberson, this organ isn't suitable for transplant. And I was like, no worries. They were all sad for me.
Yeah.
I'm
good with that.
I'm good with that. And so, but 6 months after I was listed, it was the real deal. I had one other false alarm call where I didn't have to go up there. They told me I was runner-up, Miss number 2, runner-up in the race to have the
Do you
double.
still get the roses?
I got a sash. But anyhow, I get up to UCLA, and there are 3 simultaneous kidney pancreas transplants in the same time lot as mine, and so I had to prep for the surgery, and I was like, I was number 3, and all the same surgeons did the transplant, and it was an 8-hour surgery, But there's a pancreas surgeon and a kidney surgeon, and when they rolled me into the operating room, I saw my surgeons with these plastic bins like you store your junk in, and they were fixing on the organs and stuff, and then I dropped out,
They give you that funny serum just at the right time.
Yeah. But anyhow, so it was successful. The first thing I asked was, what's my blood sugar? When I was coming out of anesthesia, I don't even remember that. That's the first thing I asked, and I went 8 years insulin-free, 8 years, like completely poster child, working out, doing the whole 9 yards. It was great. And I heard you ask other guests, what it felt like. And Bonnie, honest to goodness, it wasn't like anyone else described where I wanted to test my blood sugar or anything. I felt like it was a big, huge mistake. When the diabetes fairies were going over homes, throwing T1 down, they meant to go to the next door neighbor boy, and they got a mistake and hit me. I was never meant to be a diabetic. It just wasn't my gig. And I was fine forgetting about testing my blood sugar, forgetting the whole thing. I still had to be a transplant patient, still, had the complications of diabetes. It wasn't like I felt wonderful or had a bundle of energy.
Did you notice anything resolve during that time, or did you know?
No.
The complications.
No. No, I had it for 38 years at that time, and no, the neuritis actually got worse because the kidneys excrete the medication, and so that's why I was suffering a lot of hypoglycemia, and the kidneys were keeping the medication from my neuritis in me longer, and so then I required more when I went. I had the transplant, so no, there wasn't any relief.
Okay, so as your story progresses, you were successful with the transplant for 8 years. What happened? I mean, okay. I don't mean what happened. Right. Obviously, there's a stop, right. But how was it? A 1, 2, 3, and oh my goodness! All of a sudden, my glucose looks like I'm a T1, or what happened?
It happened. At the beginning of your show, I saw you show a picture of my best friend and I, Debbie, and she and I were out to lunch, and I told her I was feeling a little ill, and then she was in the middle of a sentence. I said, Debbie, I gotta go. Something happened, and I was sick, and what had happened was they had a connector called a roulim that connected the pancreas to my small intestines, and it wasn't rejection. It was that stupid, that stupid little roulim decided to kink up and die, and all broke loose in my abdomen, and I had sepsis and E. coli and the whole 9 yards. And fortunately, my husband had come home from work and forced me to go to the hospital, and the surgeon said after he did the repair, this was at my local Hoag Hospital, great hospital, but they don't do transplants. So he did an external drain. He kept my pancreas, did an external drain. Was working on saving my life, and he said, I did all I can do. Now it's up to her. Well, I guess I'm I'm a tough broad just like you, Bonnie. It's like I said, okay, I'm gonna live. So
We're resilient.
Yes,
That's right.
yes. So I decided I was gonna fight, and it's easy when you have friends and family taking care of you, and you can just, I could just zone out and heal and do whatever they told me to do. I'm not too rebellious, so. If I ever get out of line, I have someone to kick me in shape, and
Don't give them my number.
No. But anyhow, I thought I was saved, and then I had another bowel obstruction the next month, and I said to the doc, I'm sorry, I said to the doctors, sorry, viewers, take my life, but just don't take my pancreas. I just couldn't imagine going back after I'd gone 8 years. And
how long ago was this?
This was in 2008. And
so 8 years.
8 years. Yeah, I had it for 8 years, and now it's been 8 years. And
now the kidney is still functioning.
The kidney's working fine for 16 years, knock on wood, yes. Thank goodness. The immunosuppression's toxic to the kidney, so I will require another transplant eventually. I've already gone almost, I guess the average is 10 years for a cadaver kidney, and I've gone 16, but I'm fine. I don't think about that. I just know in the back of my head. But it was a whole new ballgame over 8 years. I met our friend Joanne Milo, the savvy diabetic, and she was like, okay, you got to get on an insulin pump. You need a Dexcom. Okay. I trusted her, and she was my friend and
you
mentor.
need to put your trust in a very, very safe place.
Right, and so I was reluctant with both.
I didn't want to be the bionic broad.
I know.
No.
I know. It's like I don't want anything attached to me, So, but I relinquished and just okay, I surrender. I'll do it. And I saw how good Joanne was doing. It's a lot of work. It's
a full-time job.
It's a full-time job.
It is. I sometimes wonder how people can do a regular job while being. I don't know. I mean, I guess at one point in time I did it, but I still don't know how.
Yeah, but it's 8 years later, and I've learned to get over the sadness of losing my best friend, my pancreas.
Twice.
I know, twice.
Twice.
It was harder the second time, I think.
I hate when that happens.
Oh, I was depressed. I cried a lot.
Well, that's a topic for a whole other show.
Yeah. But I'm doing great now.
Well, I'll tell you, you look terrific, and thank goodness for Joanne on many levels, not the least of which was that she introduced me to my new sister.
Oh, Bonnie.
And I am just delighted that you have chosen to come on and share your stories. Rarely have we had anybody with us who was that honest and in an absolutely dreadful situation, that you're able to keep yourself the way you are. Heaven forbid it comes up for any of us. We know how to do it if we have to. You do it with grace. And you certainly are a great demonstration of how that is to be done. We wish you only the best.
Oh, thank you.
So before I let you go now, I want you to please share with my audience how they can follow the life and kicks of Sharon Roberson.
I am a nobody. But I'm not a social media maven like everyone out
Can
here
you
gets.
type?
I can type.
Okay, you got one on me.
They can email me if
They
they want
can email
questions.
you?
Or Facebook.
See, there's a good one.
Yes, and my
Or
email.
if they may have
They
questions.
can ask you, especially about if your kidneys ever fail, you type ones. It is the best thing. What happened to me hasn't happened to my friends. I know people that are still have both organs functioning and are doing great. Well, great as will ever be. You know, they still have the complications from the diabetes, but I would do a pancreas again in a heartbeat. If you have to have the immunosuppression, anyhow, take all those drugs, you might as well get a pancreas in the deal. You know, right?
I've never heard it put quite that way. I like it. I think we could make a meme, a mem, a moom, whatever those things are we make.
Two for the price of one.
Why didn't I ever think of that? It's kind of like getting 2 nose jobs, but you only need one. Okay, well, I have to let you go now, and I really am sorry to have to end this interview. But
they can contact me through you.
You see, and she's smart too. I do hate to end this segment, but it's time to do for my soapbox. But before I do, if any of you type 1s out there would like to sit in that chair and be my type 1 co-host, it's so easy. All you have to do is write to me at bonniesher.com. Let me know, and I promise you, we'll work it out. Well, I'd like to give a shout out to HBO's John Oliver. On Sunday night's show, he listed and suggested ways that individuals can help to combat some of the effects of the Trump presidency. Citizens can put their money where their mouths are. And the way to do that is to offer financial support to charities and to organizations which are geared toward minority groups. Here's a list which I've put together. The ACLU, the NAACP Legal Fund, Planned Parenthood, Natural Resources Defense Council, the Trevor Project, and the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Educational Fund. Certainly not to be forgotten would be the Anti-Defamation League. If money is not flowing wildly through your pockets and you are not able to make a financial contribution, a contribution of your time would be just wonderful. Next, my shout down. According to an article in Tech Times, there's a company called Amgen, another part of Big Pharma, and they have a new drug which they have found is capable of shrinking artery-clogging plaques when used with a cholesterol buster. This drug is called Repatha, and so the use of the Repatha and a statin reduced the LDL, bad cholesterol, to extremely low levels in high-risk heart patients after a treatment period of 18 months. Sounds pretty good, huh? Almost as good as the, $14,000 a year price for this drug. It, I hate to say this, it's almost cheaper to go to the emergency room, but you don't want to. Anyway, if you have an opinion, please visit my blog at bonniesher.com/blog and sound off. Well, that's our show for this week. I hope you'll return, not next week because it's Thanksgiving, although I take that back. No, it's really going to be Thanksgiving, but we are going to be putting up a show, and it is the rebroadcast, speaking of transplants. It's the rebroadcast of the show with Dr. Camilo Ricordi from the Diabetes Research Institute. Make sure you listen to that in between turkey wings and football and all of that. Until then, please visit BonnieSher.com. Follow the number 1 Bonnie Sher on Twitter. And like the Bonnie Sings Lena fan page on Facebook. I'd like to again thank today's guests for being with me today and sharing my ride. Special note of thanks to Corey Bone and Crown and Anchor Jewelry for outfitting me with this lovely piece, another layering piece made, of course, all by hand-wired in 14-karat gold with many different beautiful gemstones. In exchange for this promotional mention. I love saying that. Visit them online. You can find them. You can find a link on the bottom of the Bonnie Sher website. Also, you can find Corey and Crown and Anchor on Twitter. So check them out. For my friends, new and old, you undoubtedly know that I enjoyed a phenomenal relationship with Sammy Davis Jr. He was my friend and he was my mentor. So in the fashion of Carol Burnett, Sammy, I'm sending you a smile and a wink. And I'll see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye now.